Lesson 4-4, Parallel and Perpendicular Lines. Parallel lines are lines that are in the same plane that do not intersect. So we think of them as lines that go on and on and on forever without actually intersecting with each other. The parallel lines have a slope that are the same because they're lines that go on and on forever. Their slope is the same. That's important to pay attention to. You can write an equation of a line parallel to a given line if you know a point on the line and the equation of a given line. So what that means is if you know the equation to this line and one of the points on this line, then you can find the equation for this line because it's going to be very similar to the first line, just with a little bit different because the points and the y value would be different. Perpendicular lines are lines that intersect at a 90-degree angle. 90 degrees is identified with a little square in the corner. You cannot assume that lines are 90 degrees unless it has that square or it says 90 degrees. Otherwise, you cannot just assume that it's 90 degrees. Perpendicular lines are reciprocals or opposite of each other. So one would be horizontal, one would be vertical. Those are opposite of each other. Let's look at an example together. This says write an equation in slope-intercept form for the line that passes through -3, 5 and is parallel to the graph y equals 2x minus 4. So in this example, you want to write out the slope-intercept form, which we know is y minus y1 equals mx minus x1. So let's first go through and replace the y1 and x1. So we're going to replace the y equals, the y1 is 5 equals m times x minus a -3. So now we go through and we replace the slope. Well, since the lines are parallel, we know that the slope is the same. So we have y minus 5 equals 2 times x, and then we're just going to go ahead and replace this with a +3 because we know that those two signs come together. Now from here, you can go ahead and distribute. So you have y minus 5 equals 2x plus 6. You can add 5 to both sides. So your final answer is y equals 2x plus 11. Sometimes you are able to compare parallel and perpendicular graphs. So this says determine whether the graphs of y equals 5, x equals 3, and y equals -2x plus 1 are perpendicular or parallel. So you want to go through and you want to graph each one of these. So let's graph the y equals 5. If we were to graph that line would look something like this. If we wanted to graph the line of x equals 3, that line would look something like this. So right there, you would be able to say that the x equals 3 and the y equals 5 appear to be perpendicular to each other. And then you could graph the next set and you can look at your y-intercept, which is 1. And then from there you do your slope, which is -2. So 1, 2. And you travel over 1. And then you could travel down 2 again, and you could go over 1 And you would be able to create your next line, which would look something like this. And so what that would tell you is that from the graph, you can see that y equals 5 is parallel to the x-axis, and x equals 3 is parallel to the y-axis, which tells you that these are perpendicular. But unfortunately, there's no correlation with the negative 2x plus 1 line on this graph. So for this next example, it says write an equation in slope-intercept form for the line that passes through negative 4, 6 and is perpendicular to the graph of 2x plus 3y equals 12. So the first thing you have to do is you have to find the slope of this graph. So we find the slope for this by putting this in slope-intercept form. So you're going to begin here by subtracting 2x from both sides. And so then you're going to have 3y equals 2x plus 12, negative 2x, I'm sorry. You're going to divide both sides by 3, leaving you with y equals negative 2/3 x plus 12. So your slope is your negative 2/3. Now that you know what the slope is, you know that since it's perpendicular, it is opposite to the slope that was given. Well, opposite would make it positive, and then you write the opposite fraction. So now to find the equation of the perpendicular line, you write it in point slope form. Y minus y1 equals mx minus x1. Your y stays the same. Your y1 was 6. Your slope is 3/2. Your x stays the same. And then your x was a negative 4, making these turn into plus 4. So then you can subtract 6 from both sides after you have distributed your 3/2. So you do that, and your final result is y equals 3/2x plus 12, because you added 6 to both sides to get your final answer. This is just a concept summary. It's just kind of a recap of everything we just talked about. So parallel lines are two non-vertical lines that are parallel if they have the same slope. Perpendicular lines are two non-vertical lines that are perpendicular if the product of their slope is 1. The symbol for parallel is two lines that are straight up and down. The symbol for perpendicular are two lines that intersect at a 90-degree angle. And then there's an example here of each graph, what two parallel lines and two perpendicular lines will look like. Pause the video to complete the lesson review. Make sure you show me this lesson review for verification of this video. The first example says write an equation in slope-intercept form for the line that passes through 4, 7 and is perpendicular to the graph y equals 2/3 x minus 1. The second one says determine whether the graph of 6x minus 2y equals 2, the graph of y equals 3x minus 4, and y equals 4 are parallel or perpendicular, and explain.